Hi, I'm Charlie DeBiase, and this is Tom Dowd, sports reporters for the Staten Island Advance. And Tom, it's that time of year again, the 17th annual Staten Island High School League tournament. This time of year is a pretty special event on Staten Island, and what do you see for this year's tournament?
It's one of the best times of the year, for covering high school sports. You really just get to kind of dive into this thing for about a week and a half. And, like a lot of years, it's going to be a lot of fun. I think, coaches always like to say tournaments are wide open, and sometimes they are to one degree or another. And I think this is a little bit. I think it's a top-heavy tournament, 1 through 4. Obviously, St. Peter's is 1, Curtis 2, McKee. New York is number 4. So I think, we could be looking at some quarterfinals to go by the numbers a little bit. But once we get to the semifinals, I think there's a lot of uncertainty. We could see some great games, a lot of fireworks. Right now, we've got a 4 seed that has beaten the number 1 seed. Right. We've got a number 3 seed that has beaten the number 2 seed 2 out of 3 times.
Right.
McKee, of course, beating Curtis for the Island title the other day. So it should be interesting.
Okay, so on one side of the bracket, the 2-7 game is Curtis against Petrides. And then we have number 3, McKee Staten Island Tech against number 6, Moore Catholic. So we'll start with the Moore Catholic Tech game. The first time they played, very close game. I believe it was 75-71. Tech beat them out. That's going to be a pretty good game because the Mavericks got to come to play.
Yeah, absolutely. They play hard. They had a pretty easy time. Friday night against Monsignor Farrell. They've got some kids that can score. David Akers can shoot the ball. Tyler Stratford scores and does a little bit of everything for Moore. And they usually just kind of hang in games, and they've played a lot of close games this year.
Right.
They haven't gotten a win against one of these top teams, although they played McKee tough, played New York tough. And McKee is a team coming off a really big win right now.
Now, since you bring that up, do you see, is it anticlimactic to what extent? Now the combination of McKee coming off the big PSAL tiebreak win over Curtis, and the Mavericks, again, are going to come hard and play. Could it be anticlimactic for the Seagulls, or you think they'll get revved up again for the tournament?
I don't think that's a team you ever have to worry about not being revved up. They've got a group of kids that have been together for a couple years. They're very hungry. They've had a lot of success at McKee, but they know that the school, they know the school is not for a long time. They know it's been a while there. So they really enjoy getting these wins. They loved it the other night, winning that division championship, first time in 21 years. So I think these kids are there's a group of kids that won the Island as JV players 2 years ago. So this is very important to them, and I don't think they're going to back off a bit. Okay,
and then on the other side, of course, Curtis coming off a tough loss. If I know the coaching staff the way we do, they're probably very disappointed they're not going to the AA playoffs. Now we'll see if they can translate that into their anger to the tournament. They played Petrides, who beat them earlier in the year. But now their second time around, Curtis beat them pretty handily. Obviously, things are going to go through Halil Kanasavik. How do you see the Warriors bouncing back from that tough loss the other day?
Yeah, Curtis is obviously a very different team than the one that opened the season, losing to St. Peter's, losing to Petrides, and really struggling to score in both those games. And, over the last 2 months or so, they've been playing at an unbelievably high level. They'd won, I think, 15 out of 16 until they played McKee the other night. The only loss in there was to St. Benedict's of New Jersey, which is a nationally ranked team, and they were really blowing people out. Halil is the key for them, and it was obviously huge against McKee the other night. I don't know if the kid played 15 minutes because of the foul trouble. Sat the second quarter, was there for a second in the fourth quarter before committing just a really foolish foul on a free throw. So they're going to have him back. Hopefully, he can keep his head a little bit better. Because he's the guy. He's their only double-figure scorer. They have some depth and a lot of guys that can score, but it's got to start with him.
Okay, and on the other side of the bracket, we have top-seeded St. Peter's going against number 8 Tottenville, and then the other part will be the only game that was set in stone from the beginning, the 4-5 game between New York and St. Joseph by the Sea. We'll start with St. Peter's, the two-time defending Sishel champions. Now, here's the thing about St. Peter's, and tell me what you think. The last couple of years, obviously back-to-back championships, they played well defensively, but sometimes they could probably be scored upon, and they'll outscore you. This year, the Eagles play terrific team defense. I think that's one thing that they have so far you know, with obviously Odie Anasicki in the middle scoring defensively and everything. Their team defense has been spectacular this year.
Yeah, St. Peter's, I think, is a team that's really better than the sum of their parts. You're right about the defense. They're the top defensive team on the island. They're only giving up 42 points a game. And a lot of that does start with Odie, shot blocking, interior defense, rebounding. But it is a group effort. You got guys like Trevor Sykes and Stephen Bach off the bench that can really get after people. Kid like Chris Giordano, three-sport athlete, you know, very good athlete, likes to hound people. And that's where it just started for them because they're not a real high-scoring team. They don't have a lot, you know, Odie's a big-time scorer. Lenny Regalia is a nice shooter. You know, Dylan McCann has had kind of an uneven year because of injuries. And he was showing a nice scoring touch, and he got hurt, and now he's back. So this team, more than some other ones, more than some more recent St. Peter's teams, is a defense-first team.
It's also going to be interesting to see if starting power forward Frank Lewis returns. He had suffered an injury in practice about 10 days ago or so. So, you know what? That takes away some of their depth. So that'll be interesting to see if he can come back. Tottenville had the big win over Susan Wagner in the play-in games on Friday night. They did it without Joshua Moody. He's not going to be back. What does Tottenville have to do to win this game?
That's a tough one. I just got finished writing my column about Tottenville for Saturday's paper, and they're a great story. This is a team that has very little size. You know, they lost Moody. They've got Gerard Fraser. You know, he missed half the season with an injured ankle.
Right.
And, you know, they've had a tough year. They lost a double overtime game to Susan Wagner that could have put them in the city playoffs. They had lost 4 games coming into last night's game, and they really had no business getting into the quarterfinals. You know, they shouldn't have won that game, but they worked very hard. They played a great defensive game, and you know, they made it here. They earned it, but they're going to have a tough time with St. Peter's.
Okay, and then the 4-5 game between New Dorp and St. Joseph by the Sea. They played once earlier this year on Thanksgiving Eve. The Vikings squeezed out, I believe it was a 61-60 victory. Now, you could bet your bottom dollar that Coach Raffanello was going to be drilling that in the Central Cougars' heads going into this game. Justin Alexander is a terrific scorer, all-around player. But one thing that the Central Cougars have, and I think he goes overlooked, he's very underrated. Point guard Emilio Diaz is a very important part of this team. Do you think he'll play a key role in the tournament, and especially this game?
Yeah, he's a third-year varsity guy. He's kind of been their key for a couple years now. A defense-first guy, can score a little bit, you know, but mostly takes care of the ball, and he's kind of their leader. This is an interesting game because you've basically got 2 teams that are more or less starting 10 guards.
Yeah.
You know, there's not a lot of height in this game. St. Joseph by the Sea, they'll bring some height off the bench. But for the most part, we're going to have 10 guys on the court who are about 6'1" or less. So it's going to be a different game, especially this year where a lot of people seem to have a big guy. These are 2 teams that don't.
Yeah, I mean, and they really are mirror images of each other. And the final score on that first game, the 1-point win by the Vikings, really indicates that. Now, the one thing about the Sea is that they beat Moore at Moore about 10 days ago, which is not the easiest thing to do, especially when you remember the fact that Moore beat them at Sea earlier this season. But the one thing that Sea has going for them these days is that junior Eddie Connolly seems to have found a rhythm. He's been scoring in the 20s here and there the last few games. How important is he in this tournament and this game?
Yeah, Sea is definitely playing better over the second half of the season. You know, they got blown out by St. Peter's early, played them very close the second time around, came back and got a win against Moore. And Connolly is big because, you know, you've got Stayback who scores. Cipriano's a nice point guard, but, you know, they needed a second guy who's going to score consistently for them. So right now, you know, they feel good about the scoring they're going to get from Stayback and Connolly, and hopefully Cipriano can create some other stuff. And that's part of what has kind of gotten them into this 5th slot, which they kind of moved up a little bit at the end and got that bye.
Okay, well, either way, it should be extremely interesting. The quarterfinals, of course, are this Sunday at the College of Staten Island. The games will be at noon, 2, 4, and 6. And the semifinals are set for Wednesday. And the championship, of course, is next Saturday, also at the College of Staten Island. For Tommy Dowd, I'm Charlie DeBiase.